Hello, Gaston County. Welcome to episode number 194 of Gaston's Great, a podcast highlighting some of the great things happening in and around Gaston County. I'm your host, Stephen Long, and we're coming to you once again this week. It's going to be the intergalactic headquarters of GSM Services right here in downtown Gastonia. We are very happy to have Laura Little on the podcast today and looking forward to hearing about her personal, professional, if I can say that, and leadership journey. Laura, it's great to have you on, and welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, well, we were talking a little bit right before we started recording that this has been a long time coming because I have had so many people tell me you have got to get Laura on to talk about her career and her journey, and so I'm really looking forward to this. But the first question we'd like to ask is just a very simple, straightforward question. Before we get into specifics about your career and journey, just tell us a little bit about yourself, anything that you'd like to share.
Yeah, just a simple life. I grew up a military daughter.
Okay.
I was born Camp Lejeune, North Carolina.
Oh, wow.
So
yep.
I've
actually been there, know exactly where that is.
Yep, moved back to my home state. Mostly grew up in San Diego and then lived in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Parents still alive, great family relationship. I have 3 kids, a daughter who's a professional actress. She's actually working on the Disney cruise right now.
Oh, wow.
A son who's a police officer in the Boise area, and then one son who lives here that is trying to find a job in the sports world, so wishing him the best of luck. And he lives in uptown Charlotte, so that's pretty great to have him close by. But I have been doing theater since I was 8 years old, and that's been a long time. It was never my intent to be a theater professional. I always wanted to be a nurse. Even in high school, I became a CNA, that's a certified nurse's aide,
okay,
and worked as a certified nurse's aide, all I wanted to do. But did a little theater at 8, in high school did a little theater, realized I had stage fright, so I started working backstage. And then my parents divorced, and my dad loved theater, so he would take me on our date nights to go see shows. And my mom was an editor of a newspaper, and she wrote the play reviews for the paper. So I would go with her to see lots of shows. Well, one night, I was 17 years old, so still in high school, we went to see Of Mice and Men.
Oh, wow.
And then she got the flu. And so I said, why don't I write the review? So I started writing play reviews and did that for roughly 20 years. And really learned a lot about directing from watching the same shows over and over again. And decided while I was in college for nursing to take directing classes and backstage classes and anything I could to be a better director. And doors kept opening for me. So I did work in the medical industry for a while, but theater kept, as I said, opening doors. I kept walking through them. So I sat on boards in Southern California, various theaters. I taught theater classes, I directed shows, and then ultimately started taking over theaters, like as executive director and artistic director, and they were all under the environment of, we're closing this theater, can you come in and save it? And every single time I said, no, I don't want to do that. I know I have a family now. It's so daunting to try to take over a theater when it's going under. And every single time it worked.
So you're like a fixer.
They call me the theater whisperer. I didn't like to tell people that because I felt
that's the title of our podcast episode right there.
I always felt funny saying that out loud, but now I've embraced it because it is a little bit of my legacy, I think, because all of them are still in existence.
Oh, wow. That's a good legacy.
It's great, and a lot of people have started their careers at these theaters and then gone to make it on Broadway or national tour. So I'm very excited about that aspect of the career. But again, it was nothing I really wanted to do. Every single job that I took with theater was one I did not want to take, but I felt it was the right thing to do. The only aspiration I ultimately had was to produce this big Christmas show that my daughter had been in San Diego. It's a 80-person show, like a Radio City Music Hall style show that a friend of mine wrote. So when I moved to Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, I looked at my family and I said, my goal is to get that show here. And they thought I was absolutely nuts. Coeur d'Alene, Idaho is a much smaller city. It's a town back then. Now it's a city. Then San Diego, they didn't think it would support it, and ultimately it did, and it's been there 15 years now.
Wow.
This year is the 15th year. So that was my only true goal, and that's happened. Well, through the years, the writer of it allowed me to switch out scenes because there's a lot of vignettes in it, and I would write my own scenes. So through the years, it mostly was my show. It was very little of his work left in it anymore, so I broke off and did my own show with his permission called Need a Little Christmas. So that's happening, and I did bring that to Charlotte. So 900 costumes, we had 45 people in the cast, and it did really well at CPCC, but we decided not to continue with that relationship with CPCC, and Boise State contacted me and said, can we buy all your costume sets and props? So they did. And so now it's done in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and Boise, Idaho, and not here. And that's a God thing because that show is a lot of work, and it's allowing me to concentrate on Broadway, but the show still goes on, which is really great.
This is really good because you're talking a language that I know nothing about.
Yes.
So that's why this is very interesting to me. I mean, I'm an engineer by training, so you're over here. I'm probably way over here.
Right.
I want to do some math. Can we do some math while we're talking about this?
Let's do math.
So you mentioned of Mice and Men. Is that, looking back, was that kind of the first thing that maybe inspired you to do what you're doing now, or was there another show that you might have seen or something, or was it just a progression over time?
It was basically a progression, but I will say it was a little bit of Annie and it was a little bit of Peter Pan, because I saw them so many times that those are the ones I would lay in bed at night and say, oh, I can make it so much better. If they did this, I could do it so much better if they'd just give me a chance, right? So those were the shows, but those are also the shows, if I never see them again, I'd be very happy because I've seen and my daughter then, got into theater, and she was in Peter Pan after, obviously I did all these play reviews. She was in it 7 times. So, she's played Peter a couple times. She's played Wendy. She's done it all at Lost Boy. And, so unless my grandchildren do Peter Pan, I have a pass not to have to see it again.
That's interesting.
So that was kind of the trajectory of wanting to be a director, is those shows.
And what you said, I think, after doing 194 of these episodes now and talking to so many people and just, being in the working world now for a long time, your story or your comment about this wasn't the trajectory you had planned, I think that's so common with people's careers. It's more common than I would like to think, because, I went to college for a certain thing, and I do it a little bit, but I really learned everything I need about life and jobs after college for the most part, right? And so many, I know so many people who, what they're doing now or what they really fell into or really enjoyed, maybe not was what they originally thought or planned.
Correct.
So that's it. But you also have to be, you mentioned a couple of comments about you had to go do it, or an opportunity came up, and maybe at first you didn't think you wanted to, but it turned out better than you expected maybe. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I knew it would be a lot of work, and it was. And, to the detriment a little bit of the family, even though my kids did theater and they were there, the first theater I did take over was a children's theater. So my family was around me, which was great. But the next theater, that wasn't the case as much. So you do suffer in the sense that you don't maybe take care of yourself as well as you would, because it's such long hours. When you're executive director of a theater getting paid $25,000 a year, right? First of all, you don't have a lot of spare money to go get massages and take care of yourself. But the business end of the theater is Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. but then nights and weekends are rehearsals and shows. So I literally had a futon in my office, and I would have to call the family and say, I'm just going to stay here tonight because I've got a meeting at 7:30 in the morning. The office is 45 minutes away. It was in Spokane, Washington, and weather. So I would just have to sleep on the futon in the warehouse sometimes. My office was in a warehouse.
Yeah.
So it wasn't glamorous back in those days, but you did. And so literally thousands of kids have gone through the program since we were able to save it. Yeah. And it wasn't just me. It was putting a really great team together that cared and begged them to work for less than they deserved.
Yeah, another thing I like about hearing these stories is I think someone like a layperson like me on the theater, movies, whatever, we see the end result, right?
Right.
We don't see what you just described, all the work that goes into that, right? And so I think when we were younger, I used to think, oh, yeah, that's easy. I can go do that. And even like running a business now, I'm like, if I had really knew what I was getting into,
right.
I'm not sure that looking back, I would be like, oh yeah, I'm going to choose that. But I mean, it's very rewarding, and I'm very happy that where I'm at. But boy, I just didn't know what I was getting into. Right.
Right.
I think that's such a common thing as well. So before, you've mentioned a lot of things, but I'm going to mention a couple of things here, and then I want to ask you a question about how in the world do you manage all this? I just went. You've got a great presence online and a website. And on LinkedIn as well, but I'm just going to mention a couple of these things. We can, and I'll let you talk about them however you want to. But currently, and also I may, if I get something wrong, just like I said before, just correct me, smack me, whatever. But currently producing "Come From Away" on Broadway. Previously produced "All Is Calm" off Broadway. You mentioned "Need a Little Christmas," Outtown. Peter in the Starcatcher, First Date, Karate Kid the Musical. Founder of Tliplify, is that correct?
Yeah,
Did I pronounce that right? And I'd like to touch on that before.
Yes.
And then I just moved this one. I had it in a separate place here, but co-producer of Dolly, the musical. And I'm pausing just because we're recording this on Wednesday, August 26th, and Dolly Parton just passed yesterday. And so that's kind of a big thing in the news here, especially in the South. She's internationally,
she's widely popular. Yes.
But I think I would argue maybe especially in the here in the South, here North Carolina and Tennessee especially. But that's a lot.
It's a lot. One correction I'll make: "Come From Away" is not on Broadway anymore.
Oh,
but
okay.
I did produce that on Broadway and
gotcha.
Around the world, all different countries and around the nation as well. Super proud of that show because it's got a lot of heart to it.
Okay.
It's about all the planes that were in the sky during 9/11 and couldn't land in the United States, so they went to Gander, Newfoundland. So a town of 8,000 absorbed 7,000 passengers, and they took care of them. They didn't care what their religion, their race. They didn't ask. They didn't care. They just took care of them.
Just humanity at its best.
And we hope that we would all do that.
Humanity at its best in one of the worst, possible situations.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
There's a great. I wish I could remember. I saw a short documentary about that, but it's been a long time.
Mm-hmm.
But I wish I could remember. I should have looked that up because I had heard you mention that at Rotary about what that is, and I should have done that so we could share that. But yeah, that's great. I appreciate you sharing that. That's a very interesting story.
Yeah. So the Broadway, what led me to Broadway is I'm a huge Red Sox fan, and I was reading.
I won't hold that against you.
Go Sox. I was reading an article in a magazine I received every week called The Week, and they do one review of a show, and this show was done at Harvard University at ART. Their theater is called ART, and it was called Johnny Baseball, and it was all about the Red Sox-Yankee rivalry. And I called the writers and said, "What are you doing with this show after it leaves Harvard?" And they said, "We're not sure. We would like to get it to Broadway." And I said, "Have you been approached by a producer yet?" And they said, "Nope." And I said, "Well, consider yourself approached." So we met. I flew to New York and we met, and I hadn't produced on Broadway yet, but I had a lot of friends who had, and I was getting them on board to help me out. And I did take it to Seattle and Minneapolis and upstate Massachusetts, where, of course, it did remarkably well. And the next step was Broadway, and then I chickened out. So I optioned it for 18 months. My 18 months was up, and so you re-option it. You pay another fee for it. But I didn't feel ready to do Broadway yet. So I released it, and then I went to the Commercial Theater Institute to train to be a Broadway producer. And then I got in with a friend of mine who was doing Peter and the Starcatcher and became a active co-producer on that. And Peter and the Starcatcher went on to win 4 Tony Awards. And after that, they take your call. After that happens, with Peter and the Starcatcher, we'll talk to you. So it became much easier for doors to open for me in New York once I did that show. So hence the rest of my resume occurred after Peter and the Starcatcher, and I knew what I was doing at that point. So,
and everybody knew what you were doing.
Yeah. So it's interesting. Broadway, a part of producing is obviously finding the right script, and I always try to find one that touches my heart. It needs to make me cry and laugh. There has to be 2 components to it for me, and I've got a little formula of what I think is going to work as far as money is concerned, and that's a small cast, a small band or orchestra. It's not a full-blown cast of 28 people. I'm usually 12 people or less. Not in Dolly's case, but it's Dolly, right? Whatever she wants. But these formulas have worked for me, but I really find that it's a hard job because you go out there and you have to get the right marketing firm, you have to get the right press agents working on the show. They've got to be creative enough to get the word out there, especially if it's something like about 9/11, right? You have to then get the right cast. Now, producers aren't in charge of casting. You have a casting agent who does that. You have to trust them and the director to make sure they do it. But it's a big responsibility of making sure the right team is put together. But then on top of that, you have to raise a lot of money. So Dolly's show is $30 million. It's a $30 million project.
Wow.
Now, granted, everybody wanted to put money into that. So that was the easiest raise of any show that I've ever worked on. But there are a lot of people who put money into shows, and you just pray they get it back. Only 20% of all shows ever pay back.
Oh, wow, yeah.
So it's like buying into a racehorse. It's the same ratio, 20% of the people who put money in get their money back. So I've been very lucky that if they haven't gotten all their money back, they've gotten at least 89% back. So, and that was just one show that was a very short run, Our Town. We knew it was a limited run, but it had Jim Parsons in it, and it had Richard Thomas in it, and a couple other really great stars. And it was just a great opportunity to bring an old show back to Broadway while a theater had a 6-month period of dark time. So we took advantage of that dark time.
So for a layperson like me, when I say layperson relative to the theater, this is probably something that is so basic in your world. How would you describe the difference between Broadway and off-Broadway for sports? And is it like the Major League versus AAA? Or is
No, not at all. Okay. So the difference between, I love telling this, so Broadway, there's 41 Broadway theaters.
Okay.
They're all in Manhattan. They lay between roughly 41st Street and 59th. There's a couple of them that are up a little higher, like near Lincoln Center, but there are only 41 Broadway houses. They have to have 500 seats or more. The biggest one is under 2,000 seats. So they're small venues. So off-Broadway, there's a couple hundred off-Broadway houses. They're between 100 seats and 500 seats, or 499, obviously, 499. And they can be in Soho, they can be in various locations in Midtown Manhattan. So they've got a little more flexibility of where they can be located, but the quality is just the same. It's
Gotcha.
a lot of the time it's the same actors, but
Understood.
the show is small. They don't need as big of a theater. So some shows will start off Broadway and move to Broadway if they have a big enough audience. But yeah, that's the major difference.
I've been to off-Broadway shows, so I just didn't know. I appreciate you sharing
size and geographic location.
Okay, perfect. All right, so when I hear something we'd like to talk about here, two topics we'd love to talk about is leadership and community.
Mm-hmm.
And when I hear the word producer, and I'm sure you'll, in the grand scheme of things, to me it's a synonym for leader, because you're putting all this together. You're bringing all this together. So what can you share maybe with some of our listeners? What kind of lessons leadership? Because this is what I would call, in my small vocabulary, a legit resume, right?
Yeah.
And your experience
Sure.
is, so you've seen a lot, done a lot, interact with a lot of people. What kind of leadership lessons can you share that have stood out for you along the way?
Well, I think a majority of my leadership skills came out at the lower levels when working at a community theater, because, community theaters don't pay. Even regional professional theaters pay, but it might be $300 a week. So as a leader of almost volunteers, you have to learn to, if you can't give them money, you have to learn to give them something. And it's your time, it's your gratitude. You have to bake them a cake. Whatever the case is, you have to make sure that these people who are volunteering their time or getting paid $300 a week if they're lucky.
Which is similar to volunteering your time.
Exactly. By the time you pay for gas,
Yeah.
they might not be out money, but they're not making money, where the volunteers are all out money, right? Hence Tliplify. But I feel like that leadership skill I had to develop was one of the hardest, but one of the best. And it has made a big difference also in when you talk to people about investing in Broadway. You have to make them feel comfortable and appreciated. Like, a lot of producers don't put money into their own shows. I've never produced a show on Broadway where I haven't put in at least $25,000. I can't look at you in the eye and say, put money into this show, and I don't put money in the show. I don't want to live off of other people's money. I want to, if I believe in the show, I'm going to put my own money in it.
Yeah.
Right. But then your investors own you. So you have to spend time with them, and you just have to understand that that's all part of what you have to do, and give them as much information as you can. I know producers who don't send newsletters out to their investors very often. When I have information to share, I share it with them. Within 5 minutes of Dolly's passing, I was reaching out or being reached out by the investors, and just letting them know more information is coming. But letting them know. I didn't want them to hear it from the press. A lot of them did. I couldn't get to them all that fast. But that's a skill, a leadership skill that should be developed in any area where people are volunteering or working for less than they deserve.
Absolutely. That's a great point. A lot of collaboration, pulling people together. That concept, leadership concept, it spans anything you're dealing with, right?
Right.
Work, family, Rotary, or whatever it might be.
In Rotary, one of the theaters I took over, whoever's position I took, I was executive director, but the guy that I took his position, he was part of Rotary, so they had paid for him for the entire year. So they said, can you finish out his term? So he was under a corporate account. So I did, and I didn't know what Rotary was. So this was 16, 17 years ago. And what I loved about Rotary was I wasn't around theater people all the time. I was around other business people. So it was really interesting for me, and then to hear different people talk every single week. So it was educational for me, but it just took me out of my theater environment. But I knew the theater couldn't afford to pay those fees anymore, but I loved Rotary so much, so I just took over paying my own, for myself. And then eventually, I started Laura Little Theatricals, and my company started paying for it, but I couldn't make the nonprofit that was suffering pay for it.
Right.
Because, but ultimately what happened is those people became such great friends, so then they started sponsoring the shows that I was, when I was working at these theater, or they place an ad in the program, and then some of them ended up being investors in the Broadway shows, and they're thrilled. When you're an investor in a show, it's usually a $25,000 investment as your minimum investment for one share. And these people can afford, if they lost $25,000, it's not going to take food off of their family's table. But they do get to go to opening night. They do get to be there for the special after party.
Right.
So to them, it's worth it. It really is, creating an experience for them. And then, of course, I have a party for them when we're in New York as well. But a lot of people came from Rotary. But, yeah, that wasn't the intent for Rotary either. It was to fulfill an obligation, but then to be around non-theater people.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's a good point because, I go to conferences and I'm in a couple of groups here, and at times I want to talk to somebody that's not in the HVAC business.
Right.
And I didn't mention that our personal connection is the Rotary Club of Gastonia here, and it didn't take us long to get Laura involved, especially on things like our social committee, and you have made a really positive impact on our club so far, and it's obvious that you have done that. So you got ahead of me on a question, which was,
I'm sorry.
No. Where I was going is, it's nice to hear how that community involvement, it is similar to when we don't expect this career path. I've gotten my Rotary experience for 25 years has been very positive, much more than if you had told me 25 years ago I would still be a member of this club, I would have been president and involved on the district level like I was. I'm not currently involved on the district level, but I was for many years. I would have said, no way that's going to happen. But yeah, it's something I look forward to, and it's the people. It's the relationships.
Really is.
Yeah. And it's so I appreciate you sharing that. So any Rotarians or future Rotarians out there, did you hear that? It's a great positive experience, and you get to meet great people and see positive things going on in the community, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And service projects.
Yes, absolutely.
We get to get our hands dirty, which is great.
It sure is. Looking back on all of this, is there something, a show, relationship, something that you look back on and say that you're really most proud of accomplishing or see occur or something along those lines?
Oh my gosh, it's so much. So Come From Away, obviously super proud of that. Super proud of getting a team together to save those theaters so all these people can continue performing and working. Proud of All Is Calm, the Christmas Truce of 1914. That was one of the scariest things I've ever done because it was a Christmas show off Broadway, and so a very short run. So you didn't have time to make a lot of money, right? Now let me preface this. Once a show leaves Broadway, investors and producers still get money, like when high schools, colleges, community theaters get it. So I did this show it was supposed to be $2 million. I was like, I'm doing it for $800,000. And they're like, no, you're not going to be able to do that. Well, we were able to pull it off. My girlfriends and I kind of volunteered our time, moved the sets on and off, and it was a crazy time that we were able to pull that off, and we did. But I had just had lunch with Pat Harrison, who is the president of the Corporation of Public Broadcasting, and she asked what my next project was, so I told her All Is Calm. So she said, well, I'd like to go see it. So she flew up to New York from Washington, D.C. and saw it, and I get these big, beautiful bouquet of flowers sent to me, and she said, let's make it a film. And I was like, what? it. And so what she meant is let's put it up again next year and film the stage production of it and put it on PBS. So we did it, but we didn't do it in New York. We did it in Minneapolis on a stage that was built during World War I, because this was all about the Christmas truce of World War
that's an interesting story.
It's beautiful.
Read a little bit about that and heard a couple of podcasts about that event.
And this particular show was 10 men singing all a cappella, and every word was out of a diary or a letter written.
Oh, wow.
So it was so impactful. Super proud to be part of that.
Oh, that's cool.
Yep.
So yeah, again, connections lead to the next thing, lead to the next thing, lead to the next thing.
Correct.
Right.
Yep.
So what's next for you, your industry? What's big coming down the line?
I'm so glad you're letting me talk about this. I fly up next month for the opening of Karate Kid, the musical, in Toronto. It sounds silly, but if you think about karate, the movements can be very easily, with great choreographers, put into like a dance movement, and to see 20 people out there doing that, it's just incredibly impressive. But it's an anti-bully story, which everybody loves a bully, but the good guy wins at the end, and everybody knows it's kind of got a cult-like following.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to see how that does in Toronto. And then I'm one of the producers of the Dolly Parton musical. That's, we're all so very sad about the loss yesterday. I mean, it hurts my soul that we have lost this person. That she didn't get to see her dream fulfilled on Broadway.
Oh.
And she knows it's happening. She knew, her last couple minutes it was happening, but she blessed it to still happen, but she won't be there for it. So,
maybe she will.
She'll be watching. Yeah. She'll be watching.
I always like to think that.
Yes.
Having lost a parent, I like to think that.
Yeah. Yep. She'll make sure of it. And, so we open previews December 7th. So that's where we work out the kinks for about 3 weeks, see where the laughter doesn't kick in for the audience, or a song's not working or something. Typically she would be there because she was the writer of it and make the changes, and now her co-writer will have to do that. And then opening day is on her birthday, what would have been her 81st birthday. So that's going to be a tough day for all of us for sure, but very excited about that. And she's just such a good human, what a legacy she's left for the world. And then legacies, you start thinking about your own. I think I've mentioned more than a handful of times with you today that so many theaters don't pay, and I have begged actors to work for less than they deserve, or they work for nothing at all at community theaters. There's no professional theater in all of the Charlotte area, the only city in our nation that doesn't have a professional theater. Now, we have tours that come in to the Blumenthal, but there's no paid professional theater in all of Charlotte or Gaston County.
Interesting. I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, it's very sad. However, they are really good productions that are done. The people just aren't paid. So I paid somebody to create an app that's a tipping app that you can go to a theater production. As long as the theater has signed up for this app, the actors don't pay anything. The theater pays $29. So I'm not making any money off of it, and I never will. This is my gift to the theater world for giving me such a great career. And you can go to a show and tip an actor or tip the lighting designer. You can tip them $2. You can tip them $5 on Venmo, Cash App, Zelle, whatever they have, whatever you have. And they go home that night and say, oh my gosh, my gas was paid for today, or my tap shoes were paid for today, or I can stop and get a coffee on the way home, whatever the case is. There's never been anything like it before, and these poor people need it. Some people have said, hey, these actors are doing it because they want to do it. I beg to differ. I can't tell you how many people I have called up through the course of my career and begged them to be in a show because we need another tenor, or we need somebody who can tap. And they're like, well, my husband's going to leave me if I do one more show this year. I was like, but we really need you. Can I talk to him? You know, and you sit down and you talk and say, this is an important show to save the theater. Can you please let her be in the show, or vice versa? You know, it's not always a male telling a female no.
Yeah.
A lot of times the wife, we need tenors. And the wife's like, no, not another show. I need help with the kids. Like, we need him.
Yeah.
So they deserve it.
Labor of love for a lot of these individuals, right?
Yeah, but, you know, we would love to be able to make that happen where people can get some money.
Is this an app? Is this something when you go to a show, if they've agreed to this, that's something that they can get access to? It's you know,
it's a QR code.
A QR code. Okay.
Either be in the program or in the lobby, and then you look up the actors and send them, or the crew, and send them a little something.
Yeah. So, you know, to our listeners out there, next time you're somewhere and look for that. That's a great point. I'm glad you brought that up, because I had made a note to make sure we talk about that. So Laura, before we kind of shift gears, you know, as we talked before we start recording, I'll force our guests to answer a few off the wall questions. But is there something I haven't asked that I should have asked? Something you want to make sure? As I reminded you beforehand, you know, I'm sure not a professional interviewer, so I just want to make sure if there's something else you haven't shared, you want to make sure we get across and shared. It's
less about me, but it's more about just theater in general. That I love to get out there. What a difference it makes if you buy a ticket to a community theater production. If you don't want to go see the show, but you need to get somebody a gift, please buy them a ticket to the show. I mean, that's what keeps them alive. And if you have power tools, or you have a sewing machine or fabric or trims, or hammer, wood, theaters need it desperately. And people will take those to Goodwill or other places, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I want people to think in terms of theater to help keep them alive, because they're dying all around the nation at a rapid rate.
What do you think is that like so many other things in the modern world, with so many more entertainment options?
Yes.
And we've become a society, we just want to sit home and stream stuff instead of getting off our fannies and going to see live stuff. Did COVID impact that some as well? Or I don't even like to bring that word up anymore.
Yeah. Well, COVID definitely impacted,
because some things I know haven't come back fully from that period.
Yeah, it hasn't fully come back from that, at least the cost of tickets. But I think it's just there's so many other options now. I think that's more of it. But I do know when people get to the theater, they're happy they went.
Yeah.
So if we can just, encourage people to buy theater tickets.
What about like drama programs in schools? Is that something that has been reduced over time, or is that still consistent? And
No, it's not consistent at all, unfortunately. I mean, it's being cut right and left. And I don't remember what school recently here in Gaston County cut their theater program, because I've only lived in Gaston County for a year, so I don't know all the ins and outs of the arts quite yet, but I'm learning. But it's always unfortunate when we hear stories like that. The fact that arts are one of the first things to go, but not everybody's plays sports, right? Yeah,
well, I grew up playing sports. I'm an engineer by training, but guess what? Our kids were in the band. Yeah, my son marched at Western Carolina, so our exposure to that was terrific. I mean, we got to go to New York and watch him, march in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. It was fantastic. I mean, it was one of the best experiences we've ever had as a family. My entire family, mother and brother and my nieces and nephews. I mean, it was fantastic. And so we got to experience that. So it was such enriching experience for him and our family, right? Now I can't say there's any actors in our family. But to me, that's very similar, right?
Very similar.
And those type of programs are diminishing some too,
right?
So that's the thing. When I first had children, if you had told me that we were going to be enriched that greatly by the arts, I said, no. I'm a sports guy and an engineer. We don't. It was fantastic. And in fact, he still plays with the Gaston Symphonic Band here in Gastonia.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, he sure does. So he's continued that. And so again, that's just true. That's one of those things you can carry on for your whole life,
Yep,
right?
Sure thing.
When it's something
what a great outlet for him.
Yeah. So, again, but I appreciate you saying that. And one thing, this is a podcast about Gaston County and people doing really good things in or from Gaston County. And I appreciate you mentioned you haven't been here very long. However, you've been here long enough to be able to answer this question about, besides your specific work here, even besides the Rotary Club a little bit, but why would you say Gaston County, in your experience, is such a great place?
Oh my gosh, I moved into a 55 and older community, and we are having a ball. There is so much going on that I can't even keep up with the schedule there. And only less than half the homes have even been put in. There's just so much to do. Last night, I went to the library and watched Laura
Morris?
Laura Morris in a reading. I love readings. I would love to see more readings in this area, but they did a fantastic job. There's so much to do, and everybody's so kind. And I know you guys have been here a while, so you're going to laugh when I say this, but there's no traffic. I mean,
relatively speaking,
I lived in San Diego and drove a lot in Seattle, and this is nothing. And there's side roads you can go around here.
That's a good point.
Unlike
it's
the
funny,
city.
we've been here long enough. We complain about it because we remember what it was, 30 years ago. But I've driven in New York, I've driven in Chicago, I've driven in Atlanta, I've driven in these places where it's relative.
Yeah,
it's definitely relative.
Yes. So, but really, it's just been the people and the rich history. I had never heard of Gaston County until about 3 years ago, truly. And
you couldn't get here fast enough, right?
And I couldn't get here fast enough. I read a couple books about the industry, and they were just fascinating to me. So I love the rich history here. I had no idea. And I've studied Civil War history, but...
Well, you're sitting at a table that is the floor out of an old textile mill.
Really?
This sure is, yes. That when a mill was being torn down many years ago, this table is probably 60 years old or maybe older. We took it, and I wasn't here, but it was formed into a work table. As you can see, all the scars and the drill holes and the solder burns and. So we turned this into, when we moved into this building 14 years ago, we turned this into our little conference room table. You just have to be careful if you're writing on it.
Right, sure, yeah.
But it's an interesting, but it's a little bit of history, of our textile industry here that we like to keep. I mean, unfortunately, we don't know, we don't have any history to exactly which mill it came out of. I just know the story. I wish we knew exactly where it came from, but we don't. That
would be a fun Rotary tour, is to go tour a...
Sure. That's a great point.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Have you had any time in your time here to go to Tony's Ice Cream yet?
Nope, but I'm going to. It's very high on my list. I told I have to have the grape.
You know what? One of the questions
lemon.
Well, one of the questions I occasionally ask is, what is your favorite Tony's Ice Cream flavor? And you know what? Two of the most popular answers are grape and lemon.
Maybe
surprisingly.
Maybe I'll have both.
They're not my thing. But yeah, I mean, I'm just a boring chocolate guy, know.
Okay.
But yeah, grape and lemon are two of the most common answers that we see. So looking back on your career, is there a mentor, somebody that stands out that really made a big impact on you, that led you to on this journey and leadership? It's anything in general, somebody that really stood out to you?
Yeah, there's a couple. There's a gal named Nike Amori. She's a casting director for lots of films. She lives in Spokane, Washington, and taking over these theaters were hard on me mentally and physically, and she really talked me through it and got me through some hard times, and convinced me how important it was for these theaters to live. So I have to thank her for that. And this is not to name drop, truly, but my next door neighbor, we shared a fence, was Patty Duke.
Oh, wow.
And
you can name drop my name now that you've been on this podcast.
Yeah, I will. I'll text it as soon as I leave. But Patty was with me through my divorce, and her and her husband were great supporters. But then
Wow.
also when you take over a theater, sometimes it feels like it's a hostile takeover, like you're almost crossing a picket line because people have been fired and you've been brought in. And even though I wasn't part of the firing, I hadn't even said yes to the job. So Patty stood up for the new team in a great way and gave us all the confidence to move forth, and it all worked out in the long run. But she was a dynamo, kind of like Dolly, though maybe with a little bit more of a temper. But she was a great neighbor, a great friend to have, but was a great mentor to me and gave me a lot of wisdom.
Oh, that's good to hear. Yeah, to your point, my experience is things that are worthwhile, things that real progress happens, a real accomplishment made. They're hard.
You're right.
It's when I was younger, I used to think that I wanted everything to be easy. And in theory, yeah, maybe, but gosh, I've also learned that if you really want to accomplish something, you want to make an impact. You got to deal with some adversity, and progress only occurs with a little bit of chaos, I think. And so that's an interesting universal thing I wish I could get across to more people and understand that.
Yep, you work hard, you work through the trauma of everything, and then after the show opens, you're just so thrilled that you did it.
Yeah.
So many times you say, "Oh, I can't go on."
It also gives you a sense, a little more when it's harder. I've learned it for me. It's a little more sense of accomplishment.
Absolutely. Yes.
I learn more when something's easy. I don't learn as much, or I'm like
right. You learn from mistakes. You learn from negative things that have happened, and you make new mistakes the next time. But because every show is different, every show you're working with different personalities.
Yeah. So, I bet that diversity is interesting from show to show.
Oh boy.
Personalities and.
I started a little journal. I don't have it anymore, but it's like, you think sports parents are bad.
Oh, listen, I coached through my church for 11 or 12 years as my kids were going. And you know what? I clearly remember even when they were young, the kids were great.
Right.
But occasionally,
a parent.
Whew.
Yep.
Church league.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, so, you would think it would be the best place for that. But, anyway. Last question, and I love this question. And sometimes I get strange looks when I ask this question. They don't want to answer. But if you could have coffee or dinner or something with one historical person, who would it be and why?
Okay, this is funny and sad, all in one.
Uh-oh.
So I'm reading a book about Churchill right now. And 2 nights ago, I was telling my friend I'm reading this book by Eric Larson. And they said, that's one person I would like
Is
to
it
meet.
Splendid in the Vial?
Yeah.
Yeah, I read it about a year ago.
Yeah,
It's terrific.
It's terrific.
Terrific, yeah.
And they said, that's somebody I would like to meet. Who would you like to meet? And I said, I have to think about that. And then at 12:18 yesterday, somebody from here sent me an email with a list of potential questions. And that question was on there. I was like, oop, I better start thinking about that. Well, at 1:54, Dolly died.
Oh.
And so now I know my answer.
Very
I
good.
would have loved to have coffee with her. So, just to sit with her and really just one-on-one and ask her questions that, she maybe wouldn't be able to answer on air and whatnot, just to get to know her in such a different, personal way would have been lovely, because I do believe in her and her spirit, and I wish more people were like that.
Yeah, it's we were talking a little bit before we started recording, right, about she seems to have bridged, or in the modern world, there's not too many people that seem to be beloved like her by, I mean, obviously not everyone, but seemingly everyone.
Every category of people.
Yes.
Right.
That's a much better way to describe that. But yeah, in the modern world, it seems like there's just not people like that. But there are. You just don't hear about them maybe. Or, but anyway, I do. And I agree. She sees, and I've been involved as an example with United Way for many years. And, so I'm very familiar with the Imagination Library.
Oh, yes.
And all, just in our community, the impact that has made. I've seen it firsthand. That's one of those things I wonder how many people really know about that, the impact that just that one little program started out as a little program, but now it's gigantically, for lack of a better vocabulary, impactful, right, to so many kids.
Right, and something tells me it's even going to get bigger now.
Probably.
Yep, because she's asking in lieu of flowers that people send money to the Imagine On Library.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, that's
so they
great.
can give out more books, which I think is great.
So, Laura, this has been terrific. I've loved hearing about your story and your journey, and maybe there's some young person out there going to hear this that is going to be inspired probably by your journey and what you have accomplished. So is there any last words? Anything you want to finish off? I always do a little book recommendation myself, and maybe a quote for the week, and then we'll finish this episode up.
No, I think we've covered everything I think I have in my heart to share right now.
Very good. Well, I appreciate that. So for some reason, I have been sharing the last few books been about stoicism, and a lot of the things that you've shared and talked about is there's some of it stoic. And the recent book I read by a gentleman named Ryan Holiday, if you don't know who he is, I've mentioned him before, but somebody that I follow, he has one of my daily devotionals called The Daily Stoic is something I read, but I just read one of his more recent books called Discipline is Destiny. And there's so many things that Laura has talked about related to that. Obviously to be involved in everything Laura has been involved with, you got to have some discipline. I mean, to the extreme maybe, but ultimately, discipline is required to get things accomplished. But it's a book I would recommend. And then I'm going to stick with a Stoic on my quote for the week from Epictetus. If you don't know who that is, I would encourage you to look him up as well. He was considered a Stoic philosopher. But he said, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. I don't like that one because it's true. Sometimes it's like to sulk and have a bad attitude, right? instead of reacting how I should. But we were talking a little early about we're going to face adversity. So what do you do with that? If you live long enough, you try to make an impact, you try to get out in the real world and do some adulting, you're going to face some adversity. So when that occurs, to his point, what really matters is what are you going to do with that? And it's obvious that, Laura, you've done that and overcome some of that.
Absolutely.
To an impactful
basis.
Yeah. Well, talk to me about running a business and being involved in the community and trying to, I don't know, sounds a little corny, but trying to do the right thing every day, right? That's sometimes it seems like there's some pressure not to do that. It's interesting.
Yeah. No.
So listen.
Always go high.
That's right.
Always go high.
Yeah. When they go low, we'll go higher, right?
Yeah.
All right. So, to our listeners out there, thanks so much for taking the time to listen to today's episode. Please continue to spread the word if you can about the podcast. And please don't hesitate to contact us here at our email address, which is podcast@gastonsgreat.com. We're always looking for suggestions for future podcast topics and guests. You can find the podcast and subscribe at the website, gastonsgreat.com, or anywhere you listen to podcasts. And please follow us on our social media platforms. And apparently giving us a good 5-star rating helps the podcast get noticed, maybe, if I can say it. Thanks again to Laura for being our guest today. Gaston's Great is produced and brought to you today by Amy Anderson from GSM Services. I'm your host, Stephen Long. Thanks again for hanging out with us, and please keep coming back to hear more reasons why Gaston's great.